number one, if a staff does turn over, there is that password and organization and that partner listing is lost with that password. I don't know if I could see it on my behalf, but all we have to do is when there is a partner or if there is a new staff, we have to make that change. And that's simple. That's just changing the new contact information for that partner or for that person in charge of it. Okay, stop sharing.
All right, thank you so much, Anthony. The PIP sounds like it's going to be it is a very useful tool, and thank you again for sharing that. So everyone, we are coming to actually our final session of today, and before Lauren and Nicole introduce themselves, I would just like to introduce Dr. Grenae Dudley. Dr. Dudley has not only been a professional advocate of children's welfare for more than 20 years, but she's also the president and chief executive officer of the Youth Connection. As a licensed clinical psychologist, she's well-versed in the issues related to youth surrounding after-school programs, such as the reduction of youth violence, substance use prevention, and career development. And at the Children's Center of Wayne County, she designed a specialized foster care program, which actually won the Innovative Foster Care Program of the Year award from the Michigan Federation of Private Child and Family Agencies, and her abstinence program received the Governor's Community Service Award. So welcome, Dr. Dudley, and thank you so much for being here today.
And do you want to introduce yourselves? I don't know who's going first, Nicole or Lauren or Dr. Dudley, but
I think Lauren and I were planning on going first. So let's see, I'm going to share my screen.
So while Nicole is doing that, I can introduce myself really quickly. So my name is Lauren Reed, and I coordinate the Grand Traverse County Drug-Free Coalition, and I am also a prevention specialist with Up North Prevention through Catholic Human Services. And Nicole will pull up our presentation, and then she can introduce herself as well.
All right, sorry, I was just having some issues with dragging that over. So my name is Nicole Flickham. I'm the project coordinator for SAFE in Northern Michigan and a community health coordinator at the Health Department of Northwest Michigan. And so Lauren and I wanted to show you guys a project that we coordinated with the Drug-Free Northern Michigan Coalition Alliance to do. So, and I'm presenting on this for, SAFE and the health department, but also my coworkers, Amy and Ellen, did the majority of the work on this project. And so I'm presenting on it today, but not taking full ownership for it, obviously. They did a lot of hard work on this project. So this is the Youth Speak project, a vaping prevention Photovoice project by the Drug-Free Northern Michigan Coalition Alliance. And what the Drug-Free Northern Michigan Coalition Alliance is it's 21 county coalition alliance that's for the northern lower 21 counties of Michigan.
So first, I will just describe a little bit what Photovoice is for those that aren't familiar. So it's a visual research methodology. So it allows the participants to use photographs to document, reflect upon, and communicate issues or concerns. So the purpose is to create community change. So it was actually developed in the 1990s, and one of the creators was actually from Michigan. So she was from the University of Michigan.
So when we started this project, the first thing we wanted to do was establish the focus and framing questions. So the framing questions really identify whose story do you want to tell? And we'll go into more detail on all of these bullets in our future slides. But we also wanted to establish a timeline and our participation guidelines, creating the youth authorship and the release form and submission process, the youth recruitment process and completion of their story, and then compiling the submissions and deciding how to share them. So this is really just an overview of the process that we took to complete this project.
So taking a deep dive into each of those steps that Nicole just talked about. So first, we started thinking about what our project was going to focus on and the framing questions. So if you were to do a project like this yourself, you'd first want to ask yourself, what will your Photovoice project focus on? So you can define the focus of your Photovoice project. For ours, we focused on youth vaping and their concerns and perspectives and experiences surrounding that. And then once you have your project focused, then you can start thinking about what your framing questions will be. So these are the questions that you can ask your youth, or if your project's not targeted youth, you can ask your participants. So they're going to reflect upon that and then take the pictures and write the stories based on these framing questions. So when establishing your framing questions, you want to ask yourself, what story do you want to tell? For our project, we had 3 different questions that we gave to the youth. So it was, what influences youth to start vaping? What keeps youth from vaping? And how does youth vaping impact your community? And when you are developing how you want your project to look in the framing questions, you can decide how many photos you want from each participant. So we presented the 3 framing questions and we allowed the youth to answer any or all of them, but we asked that they answered at least one of them.
Okay, so when we were establishing our timeline, we wanted to be sure that we took into consideration like the youth schedules, what they had going on with, athletics, or with, just holidays and school closing, spring break, all of that. And so we also wanted to be clear in our timeline about defining specific tasks with dates. So we knew, like, from October 1st to November 30th, we wanted to do youth recruitment, and then you guys can see further on down the timeline where the other tasks fell within our timeline. So I felt like this timeline from October to we completed this project from October to April 1st. We're in the process of sharing it now with our communities. But from October 1st to April 1st is really the time it took for us to recruit the youth, get them to submit their stories, as well as compiling it. So we also had to establish some guidelines of who was going to participate. So we decided that we wanted it to be high school age youth who live in or attend school in one of the Northern Michigan regional entity 21 counties. So, when you're thinking about doing a Photovoice project, it's like whose story you want to tell. Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. I'm not sure why you guys can't hear me that well. I don't think it's related to the headphones, but maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. Is that helpful?
I
can
don't
you
hear
okay.
a problem.
What's
Nicole.
I don't either.
I don't hear a problem.
Okay, Lisa, you don't hear a problem. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine on my end.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then we create, this is the youth authorship release form. So what that, oh, sorry, Lauren.
That's okay. I wanted to go back on something that Ellen put in the chat about framing questions. So she brought up a good point. So we presented the 3 framing questions, but you would answer each framing question with a different photo. So you wouldn't really be able to answer all 3 of those questions in one photo. So you would have multiple photos if you were doing multiple framing questions. So moving on to this, so you'll want to create a youth authorship release form and submission process. So on the left there, you'll see this is just an example of what our form looked like. And when you're creating your own, you're going to want to consider how you want the names to be listed for authors. So for example, you'll want to find out if the youth want their names printed with their photos and stories, and if they do, how they want it to be written. So if it would be just their first name, if it would be their first name, last initial, or their full name. And then also finding out if they give you permission to edit their quotes for spelling and grammar. So we would never edit the context of their stories, but this is just saying that if we were reading through it and we saw some grammatical errors that needed some fixing, that if they gave us permission to do so, we could make those edits. And then how do you want your authorship and releases and photos with your stories to be submitted? So when we were working on our project, we were trying to consider how we wanted to compile all of this information. So for us, it worked to have a central location. So we created an email address that was just for this project. So the email address was given to the participants, so they were able to send all of their forms and their photos and their stories to this email address so that we were able to have it all saved in one place.
All right, and Lauren, you can see my screen okay, right, with the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so then this is the youth recruitment and youth completion of photo with the story. So we just kind of put, so you guys, we put samples of like the stuff that we used on here because we really wanted you guys, like, if you want to do this, to have the tools to be able to do it. So this is the photo and story reflection worksheet. And so this was what we used to help them brainstorm and get thinking like, okay, what is the story that I want to share? Like, what does this photo portray? Why is this important to me? And what does this photo tell others about my community? So we included this reflection worksheet in a packet for the Youth Speak project. This was just one of the items we included. We also had the authorship form, the project description, the safety and ethical guidelines, samples, due dates, all of those things. And then we actually created an email address for this specific project. Okay, so we were going to show you guys the actual final product that we did. And oh yeah, Susan or Ellen is saying if you'd like to have the actual forms to email her. But I'm also going to share, I think I forgot to share my audio.
While Nicole's getting that ready, I can just give a little overview. So we did this, like Nicole had mentioned, throughout our 21 county region. So we had 23 total submissions across the region, and we had 11 different counties represented. So that meant that we had some youth from the same county or from the same counties represent or submit multiple, which was great. And then when we were deciding how we were going to share this data, so our first presentation was last Friday, and we invited the youth to come and speak at our Northern Michigan Regional Entity quarterly meeting. Unfortunately, it was during the school day and we weren't able to get any youth there in person. So then we still wanted their voices to be heard. So the students that participated then created a voice recording so that we could share their photos and we could still hear their voice while they were telling their story. So that's what we're going to share with you today.
Isabel, hang on just a second. No, I'm having issues. Okay.
Isabel, it's just a vape. Don't worry, I'll be fine. It's not like I do it all the time. These are all words spoken from our teenagers today, from overheard to spoken directly towards. These should not be the norms of our time. All of these lies are put into our heads, making youths grow up to believe vaping helps with stress, when in reality it's all fake. It's all artificial. Vaping is not a way to cope with our life or to cope with your internal voice. Vaping doesn't save your feelings or yourself. Vaping needs to stop being so easy to get, so easy to buy, and so easy to hide. Vaping needs to stop.
Yup. Believe it or not, there's a secondhand pollution for vaping. Say someone is vaping nearby. You think you're just gonna get some sweets or whatever, but it's just a vape. Just like the toxins released from the fire in this photo. Dang. I wish we could live without vapes, but here we are. People exhale their smoke, their breath, their toxins into the air, which allow other people to smell that. And that's gross. Not cool, guys. Really.
When you vape, you lose your friends, family, and you lose yourself. Vaping addiction can cause you to stop thinking. The only thing that will come to your mind is, where's my vape, or when can I take another hit? Vaping will make you go crazy. The worse it gets, the more things you'll stop doing. Vaping addictions can lead to mental illnesses, decreased hygiene, and you can also stop caring about school. When your mind is so focused on the addiction, your grades will begin to drop. You can stop caring about hygiene. A lot of the time, if you keep the addiction, it can almost be impossible to get rid of when you're an adult. Teenagers can get vapes very easily from parents, siblings, and friends at school. Vaping is a trend that needs to stop. Most teenagers start vaping because they think it's cool, and also their other friends are doing it. When the trend starts to gain more and more people of younger ages, that's where the problem begins. When teenagers see their celebrity idols vaping, they'll start to do it too. Vaping is something that we need to stop.
I don't vape because I want to be able to do sports like running. I want to stay healthy, and vaping would negatively impact sports and my life. I know vaping would make me struggle with breathing, and that would slow me down when I run.
Peer pressure influences youth to vape. It is easy to assume that this pressure only comes from friends, but it can also come from family members. Parents encourage their kids to vape because it's safer than cigarettes, they say, or you need to calm down and take a hit from my vape. It is not unusual for a parent or older siblings to legally purchase a vape for their kid, and then this kid sells a vape to other kids.
When teens look at a vape, they see an escape that is dangerous, not just physically, but mentally too. But it's addictive, and they can't stop. But when they finally look into the mirror, they will realize that they can get through life without nicotine. And that is where the real change will begin.
It's hard to say no when so many youth are vaping. Vaping is a huge thing in my school. I estimate that 8 out of 10 youth vape. At school or other community events, everywhere you look, there are people vaping. It seems like a completely normal thing to do.
This photo shows where I find teens vaping in my own school and community. It affects everyone surrounding them, not only your own body. It affects how you act, feel, focus, and so much more. I would love to spread awareness to my small community about where teens and why teens are vaping. My community needs to know so they can help break the habits in the teens. We also need to get back to having a small, safe, healthy school again.
Kids love crayons. Their colors are attractive, the names of the colors are fun to explore. Vaping is the same. Youth are attracted to the fun of experimenting and trying out the cool flavors. My friends and I enjoyed trying out all the different flavors. Did you know that vapes come in blueberry, apple, cotton candy, and spearmint, and many more? Those names seem pretty harmless, but before you know it, you are addicted to vaping.
The first question I was asked when I shared this photo is, where did you find all those vapes? It was easy. I took a short walk around my neighborhood and empty vapes are easy to find laying on the ground. Littering is also an issue with vapes, but I want to talk about all the reasons I listed for not vaping. I used to vape. It was hard to say no to my friends. I liked the buzz it gave me the first time I vaped. Each time I kept doing more and more trying to get that buzz. When that didn't work anymore, I moved on to marijuana. It was hard to quit. I was addicted. Now when I think about vaping, I think about all these bad things and how I need to be smart about my own health.
Hello, it's Avery Houston, and I'm going to talk today about what influences youth to start vaping. Youth have a lot of stress and pressure in their day-to-day lives. Unlike adults, youth don't have the experience and/or knowledge of how to deal with stress and pressures. A few stresses and pressures of youth are extracurricular activities, social pressures, school, and family and friends. Our lives are filled with daily activities such as schoolwork, sports, clubs, and all of the fun things that youth do. Even though these might sound fun or a way to relieve stress, there's actually a lot of pressure that comes with them. Pressures of seeing everyone else vape and wanting to try, or seeing their family and friends vaping and wanting to try. Youth relieve their stress by vaping because it relaxes their bodies to calm their mind, not to focus on the stress. The pressure of not vaping and or vaping can be very high, especially when it's by their peers. Thank you.
Whoa, is that a vape? Cool. It must help my depression and anxiety at least a little bit, right? Well, it did for a few minutes of high from the serotonin of, oh, that was cool. But in all reality, it made things worse. Vaping only caused more of the SADs. At first it seemed like a good drug, but it turns out it's dragging me down more than before. I was addicted to the short high, but then my anxiety got worse because I couldn't get my hands on it. Or, if I had a vape on me, I was so nervous about getting caught, I would go crazy thinking it was the end of the world.
Okay, so that just highlighted about 12 of the submissions. There was actually sorry, like Lauren said, around 22 submissions. So we have a booklet with all of those, and I can drop that booklet into the chat. So if anyone would like to review them and be able to read them or share it, then you're welcome to do that. Okay, so I know we have a few more minutes. We're splitting the time with Dr. Dudley. So we're gonna go, Lauren and I are going about until 3:20. And so if anyone has any questions about Photovoice, we're happy to take those now. Or if there's no questions, then I have a couple other videos to share with you guys that Safe in Northern Michigan completed for our media project. So.
Ellen has her hand up.
Oh yeah, Ellen, go ahead.
Hey, I know you had asked me if I would present originally, and I was like, no, I don't want to talk about the Photovoice anymore. But I think I just want to say that this was the first time that I was part of a Photovoice project. I didn't know anything about it going into it. We had how big was our subcommittee? I don't know, probably 6 people. Was there 6 of us, you think?
That sounds right, yeah.
And I just would recommend it to any group that can pull it off. I feel like we learned so much, and this project was just presented at a 21 County Alliance meeting last Friday, and we had representatives there, or aides of representatives there, to see what was going on. So it was just a really great way to get in contact with our local legislators. And we were trying to figure out how to present it in a meaningful way, and having the youth record their voices. That was something that the committee decided, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks before it was ended up being presented. So it definitely was we had to pivot and turn and change our minds, and it was messy, but then it just really came together well. And I appreciate you, Lauren and Nicole, for being willing to share this with this group.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen, for adding that. I'm really excited about it also, and I think it turned out great. And we do plan on, using some of the language in there to make a media campaign. And so I think we're just going to continue to use this information and share it with our community, because it's very powerful coming from the youth population.
All right, one of the questions in the chat is, were any of the kids former vape users?
Yes, I think that a couple of them. So when I drop the booklet into the chat, then you guys can read the stories. Sometimes it's easier to read them than listen to them. It just depends on personal preference. But a few of them do mention being former vape users.
We didn't make them disclose that, but like Nicole was saying, some of them put it into their stories. So we found out that way.
Okay.
And that's another thing, I guess, when you guys look in more detail, like on our slides and stuff, you can see, like, with the authorship form, we did make it, we did ask the youth to identify, like, how they wanted their name to be, if they wanted to be anonymous. We chose not to include any last names, but in our booklet, there are like if the youth wanted to, then we did include their county as well as their first name.
Okay. Any other questions? If so, raise your hands, please, so you can be recognized. Any other questions for Nicole and Lauren?
Oh, I see one.
You see it, right? Okay.
Yeah, do you visit other school districts? So, I personally, well, I guess this Photovoice project was for represented. Okay, Ellen, you might have to jump in here. I believe it was, oh, I wrote it down actually, 11 different counties. So we invited all 21 counties to participate. But we got submissions from 11 counties. And so I'm not sure,
Yeah, this went out to a handful of school districts. So then the partners in prevention from the 21 County Alliance are free to share this. It is for the Drug Free Northern Michigan Alliance. Another thing that's cool, and I'm sorry if you touched on this and I'm repeating what you said, but we are pulling a media campaign out of the Photovoice. And although 11 counties participated, all the media campaign is going to be shown across all 21 counties. So, and we will take off, in the media campaign, it won't say which counties the submissions came from, because we wanted to be inclusive of all of our counties that are still trying to engage better with youth. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. The amount of school districts that are covered is so many because it's covering 21 counties. I actually don't know how many school districts we cover. We should find that out sometime. That's a
lot.
That would be a cool thing to know.
Any other questions?
Okay, so I did just.
Harry has his hand up. Harry Bonner?
Yes, this is a fascinating project. There ain't many projects that youth are interested in, but this one, definitely I know that our young people in Calhoun County would be interested in learning more about this. And that's my question, do you visit other counties? And we're not are you guys only in the northern Michigan counties, or are you?
Yeah, we're northern lower Michigan is our PIHP region.
Okay, so I think, did you mean, are you asking like if we would like present to
Yes.
your group? Yeah, I mean, I feel like we would, someone could at least talk to you guys about it, or you could just take this Photovoice booklet. I think, Mike, I think, is sending out all of the presentations. So I know like you'll have a copy of our presentation, and you also will have the Youth Speak Photovoice booklet. And so you'll have essentially everything that we just talked about. But yeah, I mean, I think reaching out to Ellen or Lauren or I would be completely fine if you wanted more information.
I definitely would. I'd like to invite you guys to, school year is almost out, especially for a lot of our young people at our school district, but to come south. It's warmer now. It's not as cold. So anyway, would like to talk to somebody later. So I would be giving somebody a call. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is some information in the chat as well that's been dropped in there. So please utilize that information. Any other questions right now? Okay.
So if we do have another, I don't know, like minute, I was going to share.
You have
3 minutes. Okay. This will only take our other PSAs if anyone was interested in seeing them, because it's another youth project that Safe in Northern Michigan participated in. Well, this was just for our media campaign. So this isn't the 21 county, but we just thought it'd be cool if you guys wanted to see it.
We are the 84% of youth in the safe region who don't use alcohol.
Brought to you by Safe in Northern Michigan.
Survey data provided by My5 2022.
We are the 83% of youth in the safe region who don't use weed.
Brought to you by Safe in Northern Michigan.
Survey data MyFi 2022.
Okay, so that those are our PSAs, and I did see one more question that said, did you say that you had a trainer come in before the youth started? So this is really, really cool what we had, because Amy Horseman, my coworker that I mentioned, had already led a Photovoice project. And so she helped to create a packet that we all then took to our youth and trained them individually. So it was like Amy trained us, then we trained the youth. And so that was really helpful. And so yeah, but we definitely talked to the youth about the safety and ethical abortions, and briefed them on what we were looking for, so that we got quality responses, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll turn it over to Dr. Dudley. So.
You are on mute, Dr. Dudley.
And unmute myself. And this is what I want to share. And hopefully that's the one that came up. Can you see that? Mike, again, really thank you for inviting me to be part of this. And we go way back. I remember years ago, I don't even want to admit to how many years, but one of the things that it's been fascinating, Lauren and I have been talking by phone or emailing at 3 a.m. and all of that good stuff. And the thing that I find fascinating is that some of the things that I'm going to talk about are similar to what they are talking about, or what they have already shared with some of the projects that we're doing here at the Youth Connection. My name again is Dr. Grenae Dudley, and I am the president and CEO of the Youth Connection, and we're located in Detroit, on the east side of Detroit. And I'm also the chair of the Love Detroit Prevention Coalition. And I entitled this presentation, Hear My Voice. And one of the ways in which we try to engage youth is to make sure that we understand what they're talking about. All of us may have grants that dictate some of the things that we must do. It'll tell us all the outcomes that we're supposed to have, and then things that they expect to see. One of the things that we do is that the strategic prevention framework, when we engage our youth, we teach them about the strategic prevention framework, how they can assess their own communities, look at capacities, plan activities themselves, and to get engaged. The other thing that we have used that also helps, one, to engage our youth, but also to look at the things that result from the programming and the projects that they engage in, is because National Coalition Institute, there's 7 strategies for creating effective community change. We've all heard the story, of the pond where, we're going in and there's this frog that's sitting in the pond. We take the frog out, we clean him up, make sure he gets all the resources that he needs, and then we put him back into the polluted pond. And so part of what we try to do is, how do we clean the pond? What are some of the strategies that we can use to make sure that we impact our greater communities, et cetera? And so some of that has to do with looking at policy. Some of that has to do with how do we create opportunities for change in the communities that our kids are living in. One thing is learn the lessons that they give us. We can go in and decide that this is what's needed to clean up the pond, but we don't listen to the frogs, or we don't listen to the kids that are in the pond. And we had to learn this lesson painfully, very expensively and very painfully, because sometimes we come in with our expectations from our funders and they tell us what it is that they need to see. And then we say, okay, we're going to go out and we think this is an awesome idea and these kids are just going to love it. And then when the kids push back or don't participate or don't show up, we wonder there's something wrong with the kids. All right, so one of the things that we learned from our kids is not about me without me. How do we get kids engaged to participate in the projects? And I think the presentation that you just heard, it was engaging. It talked about one of the challenges that they see happening in their own communities. And so, I mean, we've spent a whole lot of money for, engagement campaigns. And one big project we had, it had a big circle with an X through it and just say no, trying to tell kids, this is what you're doing and this is what you're doing wrong. And we're going to come in here and fix it. And our kids, their response to us was, primarily, why is it all the time that we have to see the big circle and the bullseye with the X through it? What is it that you want us to do? And let's talk about how we feel that we can make that happen. And so we did several things. One, they insisted that we needed to hear their voice. So of course they designed this logo and it's on their shirts, to hear my voice. And so some of the impactful youth projects that we have, the media campaigns that they help to develop and act in and script, participation in various trainings, presenting at national conferences, encouraging the kids and taking the kids. They've gone to, I think they've presented at 4 CACA presentations. So they're presenting to a national and sometimes in some instances, an international crowd. We also did Photovoice, but we also added environmental scans to some of the projects that the kids wanted to do, and they identified, who, what, when, and where they wanted to do it. And then we had compliance checks and the impact of what it is that they saw. We wanted to make sure that if the kids were doing these projects, how is it that they're going to, 1, express their concerns, and 2, that we hear their voice. So in the media campaigns that we did a couple. In our community, there's a lot of billboards, and oh my God, even more billboards sprouting up now with the approval of marijuana, et cetera. And where are they? They are targeting in the communities of the underserved, the underprivileged, not in communities, in affluent communities. They said, no, not on our watch, not here. And so around our schools, all of those kinds of things. And so part of it is that our kids are saying that there are other things that we may need to do. So we did one where if the kids submitted proposals for a billboard campaign. If that billboard campaign was selected, the billboard was placed near their homes with their names on it. And so this was something that they got really excited about. And one of them is in the circle there, if your name's not on the bottle, they're not meant for you to swallow. And that was our campaign about the, non-medical use of prescription drugs or any drug. And so part of it, and they began to talk about what that was. And we made the assumption that our kids were, taking granny's drugs or taking mom's drugs and things like that. And one of the things they pushed back and says, Dr. D, my mom is selling her drugs. All right, so one of the things that we began to learn are some of the disparities, some of the challenges that are happening in our communities, and that the kids, their front row seats at the ACEs, the trauma, and all the other kinds of things that may be impacting their community. I like the kinds of things that we sort of overlapped in. They did social media, and we also geofenced. And we geofenced around liquor stores, meaning that if a kid was in the parking lot or inside or on the sidewalk in front of a liquor store in our community, because we listed them all out, they would get a prevention message that was sent to their phone. Their phones are always on, if you go past the McDonald's and all of a sudden you get an ad on your phone saying, hey, Big Mac's 2 for $10. And part of it, we just use the same technology that companies out there are using. These 2 ads here were part of the social media streaming that happened. Nearly half of all Detroit high school students have never had a drink of alcohol in their entire lives. And this was taken from the YRBS survey. And the other thing was our kids wanted to not always see something depressing, the ads that, we want to get the message across, but what else can we also share at the same time? And this was a picture of a young person graduating from school, but not if you're drinking alcohol. So one of the things that we did when we created any of the campaigns, and if we had our social media expert create the campaigns, they were filtered through our kids. And in some instances, the kid says, we hate the music. you know, and it's like, okay, they didn't like the music. They didn't like how depressed the music was. And we went back to the drawing board to say, okay, these were the responses from our kids with regard to that campaign that's about to go out, and we need to change it based on the input that we got from them. One of the other, you know, everybody, Saturday was our DEA take back across the state, across the country with the DEA. And that part of, remember when we were in COVID, we couldn't collect the pills. And I think they shut it down for either the April or October, one of the DEA take back times. And so our kids had been very interested in looking at the take back and doing something. And then we filtered it by the DEA, and we wanted to run this in our social media campaign and on our website. And this was one of the videos that the kids put together.
What's up, y'all? Hey! All right, so what y'all got?
Man, I got my uncle heart attack
I got my grandma's. Oh, okay. You know, her legs not even pills. You know, I got my runner pills right here.
Runner pills?
Yeah, they feel like the athletes, when they get hurt, they take pills. All right, well, it's time to mix them up. Okay.
So the question is, who going first?
Not me. Not me either. I feel like the host should do it.
Yeah, come on.
Yes, sir. I don't know.
Come on, man. It's your part. You gotta go first. Let's go.
Okay, bet.
What's wrong?
Yo.
Giselle.
Oh my goodness. Giselle. He's not moving. Oh my God.
Giselle. $9.9 million Americans misuse prescription drugs.
Most misused prescription drugs are taken from family members and our own medicine cabinets.
Participate in the DEA Take Back.
And that was, you know, we were really excited about the kids wanting to do this. And we were able to run that back, I guess, in 2021 when we didn't have the take back. And the DEA did support that campaign. And so it was a way in which they could participate. It's a way in which they talked about, you know, where they could get access to medication. And the other thing that we saw was a peer pressure, you know, come on, you could do it kind of thing. And those are some of the things that the kids were experiencing. One of the other things that we talked about with regard to enhancing skills, participating in trainings and training the kids on a lot of the things that we need them to do to be part and to be engaged. We do Narcan training, and as many of you do. And as you know, the DEA says we can train folks as young as 14 and up. You know, anybody that wants to come is 14 and over. We can train them under 14, but we can't give them the naloxone. And so, you know, we, with our health department, with the state, we have access to the naloxone, and we provide that for all of our kids that we go through the training. We also partner, you know, we look for those intact group of kids that we could work with, and that we work with the Detroit Police Explorers. And we went in and we did a training for the Detroit Police Explorers. The outcome of that training is one of the young ladies that participated in that training was instrumental in saving the lives of 2 people. She went through the training, she went home, she was ecstatic. She told her mom and dad about what she had done. And then while she was in school one day, her mom called her and said, you remember that time you told me about the Narcan training? This is only a couple of days after the training. You need to walk me through what to do because somebody has just overdosed in our yard. The mom went out, she was on the phone, she walked her mother through what to do. And of course, you got to call 911. And so literally 911 told the mom that, you know, her daughter walking her through that saved her life. This didn't happen once, but it happened twice. Now recognize she's an explorer. She's part of the Detroit Police Department. And the result of 2 people overdosing in a space of less than 30 days in front of this woman's house said, in this neighborhood somewhere, there's a trap house. And they were able to then use the information that they had gotten, the input from the parent, the input from our young lady, and to go and close down that trap house that was in that neighborhood. So part of the things that we're looking at are what are the challenges our kids are going through, what are in the communities that they're living, how do we then equip them to sort of deal with those challenges, et cetera. And her excitement was just absolutely phenomenal. She was recognized. We were supposed to be on national news, and then the war broke out, and so we sort of got displaced. But the fact that she was recognized by city council and other places, et cetera. We also teach our kids first aid and CPR and all the kinds of things that now they are equipped. And that was one of those, core strategies for community change that we engage in. So we looked at the Photovoice project that we had. The kids also did what were called environmental scans. They also went and identified risk and protective factors in their own communities. And then they also did what was called 1,000 Feet From Me project, cataloging the debris around their school, within 1,000 feet of their school. And it was so cool because we bought them this thing that you can roll out and you know where you're exactly 1,000 feet. And they took pictures of what they found around their schools that were there. This was presenting the risk and protective factors. And, if you could just put in the chat, and Lisa or Laura, if you could look at this for me really quickly, if you could just put in the chat, the first picture is of a school. What would you define that as a risk or a protective factor? You got to roll it in the chat. All right, is a school, or, the school, would our kids define school as a risk or protective factor? What do you see? Okay, I gotta look. No, I can't.
We're seeing some protective. It could be either, hopefully protective.
All right. The other one is a bar. Now, this is for the kids that were in our community. What would you consider the bar to be, risk or protective?
All risk for this one.
Okay. The gas station. This is sort of a janked up gas station, but just, a gas station. In your chat, what would you see is a gas station a risk or protective factor?
Mostly risk. I see one both and one depends.
It's either or. You can't depend. Who said that? All right. When we asked our kids, and that was one of the things, because we make assumptions that these things are supposed to be risk or, protective factors, and this is definitely a risk factor. The school was considered, in the community that these kids are in, the school was considered both a risk and a protective factor, but mostly a risk factor. One, because of some of the challenges that the kids had in getting to school in the community, and 2, because of the violence in the school, and 3, because of the drugs that were in the school. And they considered the school. We were at one of the high schools in the city of Detroit where we go in and we provide the training for them. And the kids said, this is what they saw. The bar in the community that these kids were in, the bar was considered a protective factor. And the reason is that during the day when they're getting set up and they're cleaning up and things like that, if the kids felt that they were in danger, they could run to the bar and be protected and escorted home. And the bar for them in that community was a protective factor. The gas station, I think it wasn't, it depends, it was both. They were risk and protective factor, but mostly the gas station were risk factors because that's where they sold vaping and cigarettes to the kids. And these places were around the schools. And we'll talk about what they did in their environmental scans later. The young people that you see here were presenting at CATCA, at our National Coalition Academies. I think this was mid-year that we took them and they presented. And they presented to over 180 individuals in that room. And the thing about it is that it was a 3-hour presentation. The kids were ready. I mean, we had to get them ready and we had to encourage them and we had to make sure. And they had all of these pictures were on a poster board around the room, and the group went and they labeled it either red or green, risk or protective factors. And in most cases, the schools were mostly green, the bars were mostly red, and the gas stations were half and half. And the kids then talked about every picture that was around the room from their perspective, from their community, from where they lived, that these were either risk or these were protective factors, and why. And so one of the things I think the lesson learned for all of us is that if you've seen one community, you've seen one community. They're going to be different. Those risk and protective factors are going to be different depending on that community and what the kids are experiencing, not what we see, but what our kids are experiencing. We also did a Photovoice project, and we did it in partnership with the City of Detroit Health Department, where they came in, the behavioral health team came in and trained. We did an in-person visual training on the Photovoice. It is absolutely amazing because, you know, back in the day, we'd have the 35mm camera and all the equipment and things like this. These kids went out there with their phones and snapped these pictures, and some of them were amazing. What they needed to then do, they did it as a group. They took all the pictures, they came in, and the kids then together wrote the story on what that particular screen would capture. If, as you know, 420, if you don't know, 420 is a marijuana dispensary, and their story here, one-way stop, the weed got blocked. For youth under 21, 420 will be stopped, because 420 kids could walk in without having to show ID and purchase marijuana. All right, and then, you know, amazingly enough, it wasn't until this past April that, or is it last April, that recreational marijuana was okay in Detroit. Medical marijuana has been here for some time, but recreational marijuana had not. Our question was, what does substance use look like in your communities? And the kids went out and they snapped these photos. This was one of their Photovoice. This was one of the pictures they snapped in their community. Cracked up beans and abandoned dreams, abandoned house, abandoned dreams, stolen opportunities and cracked up beans, open windows and open doors. Those who left had open sores. This is what happened when you fail to resist. The bars are up and the urge still persists. Smoking weed to get high may not always make you die, but your hopes and your dreams will always be broken, cracked up beams. All right, and this is what it looked like to them. And we were, you know, obviously we were floored. This picture was taken on the main street right outside our offices. And that's why I say, I can't believe some of the equipment on these cell phones. This was the main street where the Forgotten Harvest truck was going by. They captured the one-way sign, the no-turn sign, and what was on the folks that were begging at the corner. It's addictive, I know, but please let it go. It hurts you, it shames you, and it drains you so slow. One way, no way. How can I make it out? I'm all but forgotten, even when I shout. And so these are things that are coming from our kids. The environmental scans. One of the things that happened with the advent of marijuana being authorized in the state of Michigan and in the city of Detroit, medical marijuana, et cetera. Our kids, we asked the kids, we took them out to do what were called environmental scans. We trained them in the office, and then they went out with staff and we drove around our communities. We have 3 zip codes in the city of Detroit that we target, 22 square miles, period. Just 22 square miles that were there in the city. And in 2019, 18 out of 30 marijuana dispensaries that were open and operating in these 3 zip codes were not authorized to operate in our communities. And what they had to do was not only identify and take pictures of the outside of these marijuana dispensaries, they had to then go to the state's database to say which ones were authorized to operate in the city of Detroit. So then they met with our our city council person on the east side of Detroit, Scott Benson, who then and they did a presentation for him on what they found and what their concerns were. And their response to him was, what are you going to do about it? And he says, okay, let me give you to the person that may be able to do something about it. The kids went before city council and presented their findings. So then they had a meeting with Councilman Tate, who was sort of the leader of looking at the marijuana dispensaries opening up here in the state in Detroit. And they kept asking the question, what are you going to do about it? It took months for them to get a response. Even after they called, they would write, they would email, what are you going to do about it? And finally, one of the things that happened is that on one day, the inspectors were sent out and they went to these 18 marijuana dispensaries that were open and operating in our communities. And they had, if the dispensaries had to be open at the time that the investigators came. And of the 18, only one of them was open, King Seaweed. And as a result of what our kids did, King Seaweed was closed down. And so it was our persistent effort. It was going through the communities, and for our kids standing in front of city council and asking, what are you going to do about it? And that it resulted in King Seaweed being closed. And it's still closed, and it's abandoned, and it's yay. Okay, so, but part of the issue is there were still 17 more that, you know, that did not get touched. And so, of course, we will continue to do environmental scans based on the interest of the new kids that are coming in. The other thing that we did is that most of you do SINAR. And as you know, that the guidelines are now in the state of Michigan, you cannot sell vaping or cigarettes to kids that are under the age of 21, period, end of sentence. And we got a lot of calls from our principals around in the schools, all of the high schools, and saying, hey, we got this major issue with vaping. The other thing we do is called Hidden in Plain Sight. And the kids helped us put this together, and we did it. We set up our scene. It was like a bedroom scene for the chief of police, and he couldn't find all the places where we hid vapes and access to vaping stuff. He couldn't find them all. All right, which tells you as parents, we aren't going to find them all if kids want to vape and if they want to continue to use. And so one of the things that we found, our kids then went undercover. So we had some of the explorers that were 18 and 20, 17, 18, and 20. They went out with undercover police. They went out with officers, but they were undercover. They would go in the store, and it's a little bit different from how we did SINAR, because these were some of the neighborhood police officers that then could come back and ticket on the spot. So they went in, and it just sort of things that make you go, damn. All right, out of 20 gas stations located around our schools, 16 of them sold, even after asking for ID. And so, and the kids were stunned. We were all stunned. We just like, say it isn't so. But these were mostly gas stations. They were all gas stations, actually, and they were gas stations that were around our schools. And so the police went in and they issued a ticket on the spot to the person who sold, because they literally had to buy it, and then they took it back and it was evidence. And then the other thing is that we had partnered with the state, and so the state was there, and the store then was on hey, one of those, we got to go in and monitor twice a year. So the kids conducted a town hall, and we had the key community leaders, the city council, the chief of police, and a number of the parents and the gas station owners were invited, and a number of them did come. And the kids then asked the same question, what are you going to do about it? And the problem was that, they then broke into, we had them randomly go into groups and then come up with solutions with gas station owners, parents, police officers, the kids at the table, and then they reported out what their recommendations were. And some of the things we're going to be able to implement, training of store owners, looking at policies and guidelines around what it is that we could do if they continue to violate, the selling to kids under the age of 21. Looking at increasing the fines for around the schools. So these are all policies. And these are things when we talk about affecting the pond that we then are going to if we do that, if those things come to be, that what we're talking about now is how are we piece by piece cleaning up that pond. And so part of it is, this just happened in March. The town hall was in April, and now we're having a demand performance by one of our city council members to come and talk about this issue and to talk about what is it that they feel that they could do about it with the legislation that's already in place, and if not, to be able to introduce new. Our thing was, what is it we can do to train store owners? Because if you're going to be part of the community, then you got to make sure that you're part of making sure that our pond in this community is clean. The kids were recognized, youth leadership awards. They got all kind of recognition from city council. They got several awards from Youth United. And the big one that we were really excited about is that as a result of them shutting down King Seaweed in their community based on the work and their presentations that they did, the Youth Connection, not the Youth Connection, but the Love Detroit Prevention Coalition, specifically based on the work that our youth did, was given the Chairman's Award, the 2019 Chairman's Award at CATCA. Again, national recognition for some of the work that we're doing. And so the other thing that we have to do is that once we are getting the kids, how do we keep them engaged? How do we make sure that our kids are going to do the things necessary to stay engaged and stay out of trouble? In those 7 strategies for community change, it also talks about engaging them in prevention activities, engaging them in that Photovoice project, engaging them in all other kinds of things are a way in which we can keep our kids engaged. And so we have in the summer, they're part of our summer youth employment with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Kids who had never been on the water, they're going kayaking and they're going canoeing. We got them dressed up. They clean up pretty good. Oh my God, and their holy jeans are nothing. And they went to the NAACP as guests, as special guests. And, they do archery. The other thing is that they have to do community service. And one of the projects we have in partnership with the City of Detroit Water Department, the kids in our targeted zip codes are painting all of the fire hydrants. I did not know how many doggone fire hydrants there are in the city of Detroit, but just in our area, we're talking thousands of fire hydrants. And so they're going out and they're painting the fire hydrants. And I didn't know that there's special fire hydrants, and depending on what color they're painted, they may mean something else to the firemen that come to help put out a fire. We also participate quite often in the Red Ribbon Week, as many of us do, and we work with the kids that are there. And part of it, we get them out, we walk, and one of the things in Belle Isle we did, alcohol-free is the way to be, and our kids partnered in that. And so part of what we, again, not about me without me, if there's a project that we're working on, our kids are at the table helping us to say, yeah, that is something that we really want to do. They also help to plan it. They also, then they also respond. Because when we did the geofencing, and they were going into liquor stores and they get the social media or the prevention message around alcohol, they were calling back our media person, our communications guy, Jeff, saying, Mr. Jeff, I was just going in for a box of candy, and he got the prevention. So we know it was working. And so part of what we always want to do is to, one, be able to include the kids in the kinds of things that we're working on, and to make sure that, one, we do indeed hear their voice. And with that, that is my presentation, if anyone has any questions.
All right, thank you so much. If you have questions for Dr. Dudley, she did include her information on her last slide. Maybe we can have that put in the chat. Just wonderful information. So we have come to the end of our wonderful day, our wonderful 10th annual Shoalition. We want to thank everyone for their participation. Just a few day-ending comments. First of all, I would like to recognize MCRUD's regional reps and partners. And so as those are brought up, for those of you that may not know a lot about MCRUD and would like to learn more, we encourage you to contact Mike Tobias, whose email you should have. I put mine in the chat, and Lauren Reed is our membership chair. Lauren, raise your hand so your photo will go to the beginning. She's our membership chair. And if you would put your information in the chat, that would be wonderful as well. We'd love to tell you more about MCRUD and have you be a part of us, especially at the regional rep and partner level. So there are the regional reps before you. Also, I'd like to again give my appreciation and thanks to the Shoalition Planning Work Group, Nicole Flickema, Lauren Reed, Kathy Geiger, Ellen Templeton, Tom O'Donohue, and Amnia Abdullah. Thank you so much for your work. We did it without a chair, right? So we didn't have a chair necessarily for the Shoalition, but it was definitely everyone's work and participation. And we'd like to ask for the planning committee to stay on an additional 10 minutes when we wrap up, if you're able to. And that's all I have. I'm going to give it away to Mike for any final comments. Thank you again, everyone.
Yeah, really, just want to echo some of what Lisa said, but really want to thank all the presenters. I think you did a fantastic job. Also want to thank the Prevention Network staff. Many of them are on the call now. Please complete the evaluation form. Let me stick that in the chat before you go. That'll help us to make it hopefully a better event. So let me hang on one second. Hopefully it'll go in there correctly. I think it will, but oftentimes I'm not very good at sharing these, but hopefully this evaluation will open up for you. But please just take a few minutes to complete that evaluation. Like Lisa said, we will get these certificates out hopefully in the next few weeks. I want to encourage you to participate. Again, contact Lauren Reed, membership chair, myself. If I know about maybe half of you, a lot of people I don't know. So we're looking to grow our MCRUD network. And so if you'd like to get more involved or learn more about MCRUD, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you about MCRUD. Hopefully we'll see you on May 17th, a special meeting to talk about the prom, graduation season, that sort of thing. And I'll send that out too as a follow-up to this event. But that's all I have. Thank you so much for participating. We hope to see you at another MCRUD event soon. And like Lisa said, if you're on the planning committee and can stay on for a few minutes, please do.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next year.
Yes, we can.